Hello, and welcome to Satrn News. Today's date, February 24th, 2022. All right, let's get into it. The Satrn News website is back up and running. Some items from the database regarding continuity of government, U.S. code, and other items have mysteriously vanished. Haven't figured out what that's about, but I'm working on it. Been working on my main focus. This is one of my hobby passion projects, so I'll get to it. Also, I haven't worked on the JSON data from the Federal Register and haven't completely updated the live streams around the world, but soon, very soon. Take some time, all right? When you get a chance, take a look at Satrn News. Let's begin, all right? Before we take a look at the Munich Security Conference, all right, we're going to take a look at the situation in the Donbass between Russia and Ukraine and NATO. All right, let's go ahead and come along. All right. As of today, with the Russian Federation formally recognizing the Donetsk People's Republic and the Lugansk People's Republic, all right, with the ratification of the Russian State Duma and its subsequent signing by President Vladimir Putin, all right, of the treaties of friendship, cooperation, and mutual assistance with the president of Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushkin, and the president of the Lugansk People's Republic, Leonid Pashnik. All right. Today, President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a decree number 64 on the imposition of martial law in Ukraine. All right. And there's also reports coming out of Reuters that Ukraine closed airspace to civilian flights. All right. There are numerous reports coming out about seizures of taking place at Chernobyl and other kinetic actions inside of Ukraine. All right. Let's take a look at Zero Hedge and see if we can see some footage taken on the ground in Ukraine, as well as one clip, if I'm correct, coming from CNN showing Russian tanks moving into Ukraine. Let's take a look at it. All right. All right. Here we go. I'm going to mute myself.
Это происходит прямо сейчас на моих глазах. Военные самолеты, непонятно, украинские или нет. Знак звезды. Ух! Я не знаю, что мне делать. Солдаты оружие направляют в ту сторону. Выстрелов не производят. Я только подошел, говорю, ребята, можно к вам подойти? Можно, говорят. Новая Каховка, Херсонская область. Российская армия, не украинская. Блять, напугали. Крикнули в воздух и оружие вверх подняли.
All right. Let's take a look at another. Let's keep on going.
Я не бачу. Ой,
Давай, Ігор!
давай.
Ігор!
Побіжали.
Вже штук 20 пролетіло. Не видно українського герба. Точно російські. Прямо над хатами. Прямо ось над хатами літають, падли. Полетіли в сторону аеропорта. Бомблять аеропорт. Чути, що йде бій. Вже штук 30 нарахував точно.
нас самолет сбили. Прямо у нас. Вон.
Вот,
Вова.
парашют.
Да. Самолет чей хоть?
Русский.
Русский?
Утопить того мудака, блядь.
Резать нахуй свинью.
rolling in general. Look at this if you can.
Hey, John. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a column of main battle tanks that are coming to here. I'd say it's some sort of model of the T-72. You can tell they're rolling past us. I'm going to have to speak very loud because they are obviously very loud as they roll along here. They're rolling past our position right now, and what you can see here is that their tracks are very dirty, so they must have been dug into some field and now sort of switching their positions. They're coming past us right now, and this is really something. We can get close. You can see that their tracks are really covered in mud, so they must have been sort of dug into some sort of field position as they're rolling past us now. And now if we pan over, you can see that those vehicles also, John, are now moving forward. Those vehicles are clearly now moving forward towards the territory of Ukraine. They've come from somewhere on the side. They've just made that turn, and that's exactly the road leading to Ukraine. So that's
The next is at the airport, military airport. All right. Let's move on. Next, we'll take a look at some footage from today from Ukrainian protesters, not protesters, but particularly Ukrainian supporters voicing their opinion out in front of the White House. Let's take a look. All right. Give me 1 second. Let me bring this on over.
Україні! Героям слава! Слава Україні! Героям слава! President Biden, I want you to hear us. Stand with Ukraine! Stand with Ukraine! Biden, stand with Ukraine! Stand with Ukraine! USA with Ukraine! USA with Ukraine! I don't hear you people. Louder now! USA with Ukraine! 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 Biden sanctions now! Biden sanctions now! Biden sanctions now! Biden sanctions now! Biden stand with Ukraine! Biden stand with Ukraine! Biden sanctions now! Biden sanctions now! Cut Russia off!
All right, let's move on. All right. In the wake of the recognition and signing, the United States, the United Kingdom, as well as other allies in the EU and NATO have issued various sanctions, from the seizing of assets economic, financial sanctions on the Russian national as well as Russian ministry officials and the Russian Duma, all right, lawmakers. As of now, it's been about 27 who voted in favor of the recognition of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic, all right. The United Kingdom also today imposed various actions against Russian persons and entities. Here's the Prime Minister's statement that he gave today in the House of Commons regarding the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Let's go ahead and bring that up, all right.
Mr. Speaker, I've just come from a meeting of G7 leaders joined by Secretary General Stoltenberg of NATO, and with permission I'll update the House on our response to President Putin's onslaught against a free and sovereign European nation. Shortly after 4 o'clock this morning, I spoke to President Zelensky of Ukraine as the first missiles struck his beautiful and innocent country and its brave people, and I assured him of the unwavering support of the United Kingdom. And I can tell the House that at this stage, Ukrainians are offering a fierce defence of their families and their country. And I know that every honourable member will share my admiration for their resolve. Earlier today, President Putin delivered another televised address and offered the absurd pretext that he sought the demilitarisation and denazification of Ukraine. In fact, he is hurling the might of his military machine against a free and peaceful neighbour in breach of his own explicit pledge and every principle of civilised behaviour between states, spurning the best efforts of this country and our allies to avoid bloodshed. For this, Putin will stand condemned in the eyes of the world and of history. He will never be able to cleanse the blood of Ukraine from his hands. And although the UK and our allies tried every avenue for diplomacy until the final hour, I'm driven to conclude that Putin was always determined to attack his neighbour, no matter what we did. Now we see him for what he is, a blood-stained aggressor who believes in imperial conquest. I am proud that Britain did everything within our power to help Ukraine prepare for this onslaught, and we will do our utmost to offer more help as our brave friends defend their homeland. Our embassy took the precaution on 18th of February of relocating from Kiev to the city of Lviv in western Ukraine, where our ambassador Melinda Simmons continues to work with the Ukrainian authorities and to support British nationals. Now we have a clear mission. Diplomatically, politically, economically, and eventually militarily, this hideous and barbarous venture of Vladimir Putin must end in failure. At the G7 meeting this afternoon, we agreed to work in unity to maximise the economic price that Putin will pay for his aggression. And this must include ending Europe's collective dependence on Russian oil and gas that has served to empower Putin for too long. So I welcomed, again, Chancellor Scholz's excellent decision to halt the certification of Nord Stream 2. Mr. Speaker, countries that together comprise about half the world economy are now engaged in maximising pressure, economic pressure, on one that makes up a mere 2%. For our part today, the UK is announcing the largest and most severe package of economic sanctions that Russia has ever seen. With new financial measures, we're taking new powers to target Russian finance, in addition to the banks we've already sanctioned this week. Today, in concert with the United States, we are imposing a full asset freeze on VTB. More broadly, these powers will enable us totally to exclude Russian banks from the UK financial system, which is, of course, by far the largest in Europe, stopping them from accessing sterling and clearing payments through the UK. And with around half of Russia's trade currently in US dollars and sterling, I'm pleased to tell the House that the United States is taking similar measures. These powers will also enable us to ban Russian state and private companies from raising funds in the UK, banning dealing with their securities and making loans to them. We will limit the amount of money that Russian nationals will be able to deposit in their UK bank accounts, and sanctions will also be applied to Belarus for its role in the assault on Ukraine. Overall, we'll be imposing asset freezes on more than 100 new entities and individuals, on top of the hundreds that we've already announced. This includes all the major manufacturers that support Putin's war machine. Furthermore, we are also banning Aeroflot from the UK. Next, on top of these financial measures and in full concert with the United States and the EU, we will introduce new trade restrictions and stringent export controls similar to those that they in the US are implementing. We will bring forward new legislation to ban the export of all dual-use items to Russia, including a range of high-end and critical technological equipment and components in sectors including electronics, telecommunications, and aerospace. Legislation to implement this will be laid early next week. These trade sanctions will constrain Russia's military, industrial, and technological capabilities for years to come. We're bringing forward measures on unexplained wealth orders from the Economic Crime Bill to be introduced before the House rises for Easter. And we will set out further detail before Easter on the range of policies to be included in the full bill in the next session, including on reforms to Companies House and a register of overseas property ownership. We will set up a new dedicated kleptocracy cell in the National Crime Agency to target sanctions evasion and corrupt Russian assets hidden in the UK, and that means oligarchs in London will have nowhere to hide. And Mr. Speaker, I know that this House will have great interest in the potential of cutting Russia out from SWIFT. And I can confirm, as I've always said, that nothing is off the table. But for all these measures to be successful, it is vital that we have the unity of our partners, the unity in the G7 and other fora. And, Mr. Speaker, Russian investors are already delivering their verdict on the wisdom of Putin's actions. And so far today, Russian stocks are down by as much as 45%, wiping $250 billion from their value in the biggest one-day decline on record. Sberbank, Russia's biggest lender, is down by as much as 45%, and Gazprom down by as much as 39%, while the ruble has plummeted to record lows against the dollar. We will continue on a remorseless mission to squeeze Russia from the global economy piece by piece, day by day, and week by week. And we will, of course, use Britain's position in every international forum to condemn the onslaught against Ukraine, and we will counter the Kremlin's blizzard of lies and disinformation by telling the truth about Putin's war of choice and his war of aggression. And we will work with our allies on the urgent need to protect other European countries that are not members of NATO and who could become targets of Putin's playbook of subversion and aggression. And we will resist any creeping temptation to accept what Putin is doing today as a fait accompli. There can be no creeping normalization, not now, not in the months to come, not in the years ahead. We must strengthen NATO's defences still further. And so today I called for a meeting of NATO leaders, which will take place tomorrow, and I will be convening the countries that contribute to the Joint Expeditionary Force, which is led by the United Kingdom and comprises both NATO and non-NATO members. Last Saturday, I warned that this invasion would have global economic consequences, and this morning the oil price has risen strongly. The government will do everything possible to safeguard our own people from the repercussions for the cost of living. And of course, we stand ready to protect our country from any threats, including in cyberspace. Above all, the House will realise the hard and heavy truth that we now live in a continent where an expansionist power, deploying one of the world's most formidable military machines, is trying to redraw the map of Europe in blood and conquer an independent state by force of arms. And it's vital for the safety of every nation that Putin's squalid venture should ultimately fail and be seen to fail. However long it takes, that will be the steadfast and unflinching goal of the United Kingdom. I hope of every member of this House and every one of our great allies, certain that together we have the power and the will to defend the cause of peace and justice as we have always done. And I say to the people of Russia, again, whose president has just authorized an onslaught against a fellow Slavic people, I cannot believe that this horror is being done in your name, or that you really want the pariah status that these actions will bring to the Putin regime. And to our Ukrainian friends, in this moment of agony, I say that we are with you and we are on your side. Your right to choose your own destiny is a right that the United Kingdom and our allies will always defend. And in that spirit, I join you in saying Slava Ukraini, and I commend this statement to the House.
All right, strong words coming from the former Mayor of London, Prime Minister Boris Johnson. All right. Now we're going to take a look at just a few sanctions imposed by the United States. This is coming from the White House. Then we'll take a look at snippets coming from the U.S. Department of Treasury. All right, let's get that on the screen. All right, hold on. Let's show web. All right. All right. Let's get this on the screen. All right, there we go. All right, this is a fact sheet. The United States imposes first tranche of swift and severe cost on Russia. All right, if we scroll down, we're just going to read certain parts of it. All right, full blocking sanctions on two significant Russian financial institutions, Veneshicom Bank and Promsvyaz Bank. All right. The Secretary of Treasury will impose full blocking sanctions on two of the state-owned Russian financial institutions. All right, now collectively, these institutions hold more than about $80 billion in assets and finance the Russian defense sector and economic development. All right, let's scroll on up. All right, and we have expanded sovereign debt prohibitions restricting U.S. individuals and firms' participation in secondary markets for debt issued by the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, the National Wealth Fund of the Russian Federation, and the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation. All right. Next, we have, put that on the screen, full blocking sanctions on 5 Russian elites and their family members. All right. Alexander Portnikov, all right, and his son Denis, Sergei Kiriyenko and his son Vladimir, and the CEO, Peter Fravkov of Promsvyaz Bank. All right. They're going to say these individuals and their relatives directly benefit from their connections with the Kremlin. Other Russian elites and their family members are on notice that that additional actions could be taken against them. All right. The fact sheet goes on to say that today the Secretary of Treasury will determine, make sure you can see that. Today, the Secretary of Treasury will determine that any institution in the financial sector of the Russian Federation economy is target for further sanctions. Over 80% of Russia's daily foreign exchange transactions globally in the United States dollar, and roughly half of Russia's international trade is conducted in dollars. With this action, no Russian financial institution is safe from our measures, including the largest banks. All right. As I stated, we're going to take a look at the U.S. Department of Treasury. They announced unprecedented sanctions against Russia. Let's give it a slight rundown. Let's go ahead and bring that up. All right. We have the U.S. Treasury announces unprecedented and expansive sanctions against Russia, imposing swift and severe economic costs. Not going to make you dizzy, but we're going to scroll up a little bit. I already talked about some banks. All right. Now, major economic actions coming from the Department of Treasury, targeting Russia's two largest financial institutions. All right. The Treasury has taken unprecedented action against Russia's two largest financial institutions, Public Joint Stock Company, Sberbank of Russia, and VTB Bank, Public Joint Stock Company. All right. Let's scroll on up. All right. Goes on to talk about full blocking sanctions. All right. Next, blocking other major financial institutions, Public Joint Stock Company, Bank Financial Corporation, Oskrikt. All right. All right. Next, Open Joint Stock Company, Savcombank. All right. Next, Joint Stock Commercial Bank, excuse me, Novacombank. All right. Next on the list, debt and equity prohibitions against major state-owned and private entities. All right. Pursuant to Executive Order 14024, OFAC identified the following 11 Russian entities as being owned or controlled by or having acted or proposed to act or on behalf or directly or indirectly of GOR. Excuse me. All right. We have Sberbank. All right. Gazprom, Joint Stock Company, all right. Joint Stock Company, Russian Agricultural Bank, all right. Public Joint Stock Company, Gazprom, Public Joint Stock Company, Gazprom Neft, all right. Let me scroll on up, all right. Public Joint Stock Company, Transneft, Public Joint Stock Company, Rostocom, all right. Public Joint Stock Company, Roshydro, Public Joint Stock Company, Alrosa, Open Joint Stock Company, Russian Railway. All right. Pursuant to Executive Order 14024, we have Joint Stock Company Alpha Bank, Credit Bank of Moscow, Public Joint Stock Company, and Sberbank. All right. Now, these general licenses apply to international organizations and entities. Let me scroll up so you can see this. We have international organizations and entities, agricultural and medical commodities, and the COVID-19 pandemic, overflight and emergency landings, energy, dealings in certain debt or equity, derivative contracts. Whew, that's a mean joint right there. The wind down of transactions involving certain blocked persons, and the rejection of transactions involving certain blocked persons. All right. New action targeting Russian families. Not going to go all the way into us, but basically families close to Putin. These are the families, if you can see. All right. Also have financial sector elites. All right. Now to be the chairman of the board of Sberbank. All right. Also, two high-ranking officials from VTB Bank. All right. Including Moscow-based real estate companies, limited liability company Atlantic S. Let me make sure you can see this. And limited liability company Inspira Investment A. All right. All right. All right. Also, wife Galina Yuliatina, which she was previously allegedly implicated in a golden passport scheme. All right. Let's scroll on up. Subsidiary of a Russian financial institution sanctioned on February 24th, 2022, pursuant to Executive Order 14024. All right. Subsidiary bank, Sberbank of Russia, Joint Stock Company. All right. Joint Stock Company, Sberbank. Open Joint Stock Company, BPS Sberbank. ISK Joint Stock Company. Joint Stock Company, Sberbank Leasing. Limited Liability Company, Sberbank Capital. Joint Stock Company, Sberbank Automated Trade Systems. Limited Liability Company, Promising Investments. Limited Liability Company, Sberbank Financial Company. Limited Liability Company Serbank Investments, Serbank Europe AG, Insurance Company Serbank Life Insurance Limited Liability Company, SB Securities SA, Joint Stock Company, Serbank Private Pension Fund, Limited Liability Company Serbank Insurance Broker, Insurance Company Serbank Insurance Limited Liability Company, Limited Liability Company Serbank CIB Holdings. Make sure you can see this. Limited Liability Company Serbank Factoring, Joint Stock Company Rashtetny. Yeah. All right. And the list goes on. All right. Let's just speed this up. These are the property and interest and property of VTB subsidiaries that are blocked. All right. Numerous. It's totaling 20 items. All right. Property and interest and property of the following Crete subsidiaries are blocked. 12 items. All right. And South Combach subsidiaries totaling 22 items. 22 items. All right. Let's take a look at oil prices in the wake of this. All right. We see as of right now, let's refresh. All right. All right. This overview of energy. We have Brent crude at 101.12. We have West Texas Intermediate at 94.85. Let's go here. Let's see. We'll look at what this was around this time last year. Let's make sure you can see this on the screen. All right. As of, let's see, 21. We see that was around 61.50 for West Texas Intermediate. And let's pull this up so you can see the graph. All right, this is coming from Market Insider. We see around March 24th, Brent was at 67.04. 67.04. Now, in response to the sanctions imposed against Russia, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, in his official statement, we're going to read a portion of that, went on to say, let's bring that up. I think that's here, yeah. All right. Efforts being undertaken for many years now to hinder the development of the Russian economy have clearly failed. But despite that, the United States still has this reflex of turning into restrictive instruments, which are ineffective and counterproductive as far as the United States' own interests are concerned. It goes on to say Russia has proven its ability to minimize the inflicted damage regardless of the costs that come with the sanctions. And certainly the sanctions pressure will not lessen our resolve to firmly stand up for our interests. All right. We'll end there with regards to the foreign minister. But if you have a chance, take a look at it. All right. Now, during today's press briefing coming from the White House, a question was asked regarding China-Russian relations. All right. Now, regarding the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the Sino-Rus relations, we'll take a look at the foreign minister spokesperson, who is Shenyang's regular press conference from today on February 24th, 2020. Let's go ahead and pull that up. All right. Numerous questions were asked the spokesperson. All right. One coming from AFP was asked. China has consistently, let me pull this up so you can see it. China has consistently refrained from condemning Russia's aggression towards Ukraine. Now that President Putin has begun an invasion and many Ukrainians are waking up to the sounds of military shelling, will China finally condemn Russia's actions? She goes on to say, they're closely monitoring the latest developments. We call on all sides to exercise restraint and prevent the situation from getting out of control. All right. The Global Times asks, according to Beijing-based Qian Pangu lab released a report on February 23rd. It found that equation, the hacking group on the United States National Security Agency, has been creating the top-of-the-line backdoor and conducting a decade-long cyber attack operation called Telescreen, BVP-47, against 45 countries and regions, including China, Russia, Japan, Republic of Korea, India, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, Australia, Thailand, Egypt, and Brazil. The operation covers such industries as communications, universities, research institutions, economic and military sectors. Some of the attacks even used Japan as a springboard to attack other countries. The Global Tiger goes on to question. All right. Goes on to say, as we understand, this is the first time that Chinese cybersecurity lab has publicly exposed the complete chain of technical evidence about this cyber attack launched by the NSA. Do you have any comments? All right. She goes on to say, we noted relevant news reports. Let me put this on the screen so you can see this. All right. We noted relevant news reports and technical reports. We expressed grave concern over the irresponsible, malicious cyber activities exposed by the report and strongly urged the U.S. to offer an explanation and immediately stop such activities. China would take necessary measures to uphold China's cybersecurity and interests. All right. Not going to go through its entirety, but you can go ahead and take a look at the statement coming from the Foreign Ministry spokesperson. All right. All right. Bloomberg goes on to ask, can you say then China considers Russia's actions an invasion? Is it an invasion? It is a violation of the UN Charter. She goes on to say, we have stated China's principal position on the Ukraine issue. There is a complex historical background and context on the issue. The current situation is the result of interplay of various factors. We noted that today Russia announced its launch of special military operations in eastern Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry said that its armed forces will not conduct missile, air, or artillery strikes on cities. China is closely monitoring the latest developments and calls on all sides to exercise restraint and prevent the situation from getting out of control. All right. We're going to move on. But this, I like looking at the questions and the answers that are coming from the Chinese Foreign Ministry people. All right. Let's move on. All right, and move on to the Munich Security Conference 2022. All right, let's go ahead and bring that up on the screen. All right. Now, the 58th annual Munich Security Conference was held this year, as it is every year, from at the Hotel Bayerischer Hof in Munich, Germany. Now, the dates were February 18th to the 20th, 2022. All right, as I said before, at its usual location of Bayerischer Hof in Munich, Germany. All right. Now, at a time when tensions are rising all over the globe, the strengthening of alliances on the world stage using multinational bodies is key, and some would say pivotal, as diplomatic conclusion to today's transatlantic issues seem to be eroding. In the wake of the presidency of Donald Trump, some would say we, the United States and its government, have returned to the table, re-entering international agreements such as the Paris Agreement, the Iran Nuclear Agreement, JCPOA, as well as our rejoining of the intergovernmental bodies within the United Nations, such as the World Health Organization and the UN Human Rights Council. This year's topics range from global order, human security, sustainability, technology, as well as issues related to the coronavirus pandemic presently and preparation for potential pandemics in the future. All right. Continued existence of the current pandemic vulnerabilities from the nation state's perspective are at the forefront of the chessboard that is the geopolitical arena. All right. And key focus of this year's agenda is the strengthening of democracy and the liberal values. We'll focus on two sessions from the Munich Security Conference 2022. All right. And those are from the UN Secretary General Guterres and Madam Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. All right. Beginning with the Secretary General of the United Nations, António Guterres. All right. Let's take a look at that. All right. Let's go ahead and bring that up. All right.
And now we're going to have our opening session. You know, I started my professional. We will have, I hope,
ladies and press,
the tide.
Ambassador Ischinger, before I start, let me express in this last your conference, let me express my enormous gratitude and appreciation for what has been a remarkable contribution for international dialogue for peace and security. And dear Christoph, I hope you'll invite me next year. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be back in Munich for the first time in 3 years. And unfortunately, the world has grown even more complex and dangerous during that time. I see 5 major reasons. First, geopolitical divides have continued to grow and deepen. These divides often paralyze the Security Council and create an environment of impunity in which state and non-state actors believe they can do whatever they want. I'm often asked whether we are in a new Cold War. My answer is that the threat to global security now is more complex and probably higher than at that time. During much of the Cold War, there were mechanisms that enabled the protagonists to calculate risks and use back channels to prevent crises. Today, many of those systems no longer exist, and most of the people trained to use them are no longer here with us. So miscommunication and miscalculation can make a minor incident between powers escalate out of control, causing incalculable harm. With the concentration of Russian forces around Ukraine, I am deeply concerned about heightened tensions and increased speculation about a military conflict in Europe. I still think it will not happen, but if it did, it would be catastrophic. There is no alternative to diplomacy. All issues, including the most intractable, must be addressed through diplomatic frameworks. And it is high time to seriously de-escalate. The United Nations Charter, a fundamental pillar of international law, clearly says, and I quote, "All members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations." The Charter is clear. And I also urge all parties to be extremely careful with their rhetoric. Public statements should aim to reduce tensions, not to inflate them. And the United Nations system remain fully operational in the Ukraine, including our humanitarian work in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. And I would like to express my gratitude to the cooperation we have with the Ukrainian government in this regard. Excellencies, geopolitical divides are rarely solved, but they can and must be managed. And the new agenda for peace, proposed in my recent Our Common Agenda report, should advance efforts towards more effective collective security responses. Respect for international law, trust building and dialogue are paramount. Second, crises are proliferating. Conflicts are increasingly internationalized with the involvement of regional and global powers. In Yemen and Libya, regional rivalries are firmly embedded in the civil wars. And at the same time, crises are more fragmented. Multiple actors operate in loose and rapidly shifting coalitions with different agendas. A widespread failure by states to deliver essential services and respond to the aspirations of their people is also giving rise to tensions and social unrest. Coups used to happen once every couple of years. In 2022, it's once every couple of weeks. And these developments are both a symptom and a cause of the increased unpredictability and fragility of the global landscape. Third, the threat of global terror looms over the world. In Syria, Daesh is using children as human shields. Al-Qaeda and its affiliates are regaining great power to cause harm. The risks of terrorist spillover out of Afghanistan, as well as the alarming spread of terrorism in some African countries, show how adept terrorists are at exploiting power vacuums and subverting fragile states. In the African context, we need robust African peace enforcement and counter-terrorist operations mandated by the UN Security Council under Chapter 7 of the Charter and with stable and predictable funding. The present situation is unsustainable. Extremism and terrorism flourishes where there is poverty, hunger, inequality and injustice. And the Sustainable Development Goals remain our greatest prevention tools. Excellencies, fourth, these factors are exacerbated by non-traditional security threats, primarily increased inequality, the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. Discrimination, exclusion, and economic and social and cultural inequalities are exacting a devastating toll and creating an acute risk of violence and conflict. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the inadequacy and moral bankruptcy of our global financial system, which has increased the systemic inequality between North and South. Many countries in the Global South have suffered devastating economic losses during the pandemic, and many of them still need vaccines. Governments face debt default and financial ruin, while their people face poverty, unemployment, hunger, and despair. Meanwhile, the climate crisis is out of control, causing increased devastation that will lead to record levels of forced displacement. And this could further destabilize entire regions. I urge all countries to step up support for global solutions to these non-traditional security threats, including the full implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate change to keep 1.5 degrees alive, and it risks to be dying very soon. The World Health Organization Global Vaccination Strategy and urgent reforms to the global financial system to enable developing countries to access the resources needed to support their people. Excellencies, fifth and finally, digital technology is creating ever more dangerous ways for groups of people to harm each other, from cyber attacks to artificial intelligence-assisted weapons. Many wars are hybrid, fought both on the battlefield and online. Digital communications enable propaganda and conspiracy theories to spread like wildfires. Hate speech and racism add fuel to the flames. The proposed Global Digital Compact that I presented aims to find collective solutions that enable the safe development of digital technology and bring its benefits to all. And I've also called for a global code of conduct that promotes integrity in public information. Large-scale disinformation that undermines scientifically established facts is a massive security risk. We urgently need better global governance, and this is a key objective of the UN Summit of the Future next year. Excellencies, all these threats put human rights and democracy at serious risk. We need a surge in diplomacy for peace, a surge in political will for peace, and a surge in investment for peace. And I count on your leadership to make it happen. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna stop that right there. If you have a chance, you can go take a look at the Q&A coming from the first day of the Munich Security Conference regarding UN Secretary General. All right, but we know from past statements by the UN chief. All right, he calls these his 5-alarm global fires. All right, now these 5-alarm global fires, he stated these 5 points. They're not in the order the way he ran down them at the conference. All right, but we're gonna take a look at it. And then we're also going to give some statements that he made based on those 5 points from the 5-alarm global fires he mentions. All right. The first is Let's put him back on the screen. I'll be up there. All right. The first is the COVID battle, the prioritization of the COVID battle by utilization of COVAX. All right. He goes on to make statements. Our actions must be grounded in science and common sense. He also said the science is clear. Vaccines works. Vaccines save lives. He goes on to say, instead of the virus spreading like wildfire, we need vaccines to spread like wildfire. All right. 2. Alarm. The reformation of global finance, recipe for instability. All right. These are his quotes. All right. Let's tell it like it is. The global financial system is morally bankrupt. It favors the rich and punishes the poor. The divergence between developed and developing countries is becoming systemic. A recipe for instability, crisis, and forced migration. These imbalances are not a bug, but a feature of the global financial system. 3. The climate emergency. Support green transition. No new coal plants, no expansion in oil and gas exploration. Now's the time for unprecedented investment surge in renewable industry infrastructure. Tripling $5 trillion annually by 2030. All right. Access and eligibility systems must be reviewed to allow developing countries to get the finance they need on time. All right. 4. Technology and cyberspace. Growing digital chaos is benefiting the most destructive forces and denying opportunities to ordinary people, he says. All right. He also goes on to say establishment of a global digital compact as well as a global code of conduct is needed. Right. And lastly, of the 5 alarm fires, peace and security. Countries must act in the face of challenges such as the assault on human rights and rule of law, rising populism, racism, and extremism, and escalating humanitarian crisis fueled by climate change. He says this world is too small for so many hotspots. He then goes on to say geopolitical divides must be managed to avoid chaos around the globe. We need to maximize areas for cooperation while establishing robust mechanisms to avoid escalation. All right. Now, these are what His Excellency Guterres calls 5 alarm global fires. All right. 5 alarm global fires. All right. Moving on. All right. As regional civil war continues to escalate, the rights of citizens, especially women and children, are under threat. As the increase in refugees from war, as well as environmental issues, come about, new kinetic actions in the form of digital weapons pose a definite threat to the current global order and security of each nation. The strengthening of current international order, as well as preparation for the next world order, which seems to be highly technocratic in nature, is giving rise to hurried behavior that nation states are kind of showing their negligence, and one can say dismissal with regards to the current global treaties and charters that have got us to this point. All right. Now we're going to take a look at Madam Vice President's speech on the second day of the Munich Security Conference. All right. Let's take a look at it.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Ambassador Ischinger. And to all of the very extraordinary leaders who are here today, I thank you for the kind introduction and your years of dedicated leadership. And thank you also to Chancellor Scholz for your kind words. So it is an honor to join all of these distinguished leaders from around the world this morning. I am certain we all recognize this year's gathering is unlike those of the recent past. Not since the end of the Cold War has this forum convened under such dire circumstances. Today, as we are all well aware, the foundation of European security is under direct threat in Ukraine. Let us remember From the wreckage of 2 world wars, a consensus emerged in Europe and the United States. A consensus in favor of order, not chaos. Security, not conflict. So by forging relationships and bonds, forging organizations and institutions, laws and treaties, we together established a set of rules, norms that have governed ever since. And Europe has enjoyed unprecedented peace, security, and prosperity through a commitment to a set of defining principles. The United States is equally committed to these principles: that people have a right to choose their own form of government, that nations have a right to choose their own alliances, that there are inalienable rights which governments must protect, that the rule of law should be cherished, that sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states must be respected, and that national borders should not be changed by force. We are here in Munich together to reaffirm our commitment to these principles. These principles have brought us peace and security. The backbone of this, of course, is NATO, the greatest military alliance the world has ever seen. As a defensive alliance, we have deterred acts of aggression against NATO territory for the past 75 years. And today, let me be clear, America's commitment to Article 5 is ironclad. This commitment is sacrosanct to me, to President Biden, and to our entire nation. In fact, I am joined here in Munich by a bipartisan delegation from the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives. They are Democrats and Republicans. They have a wide range of political views, but they stand together in recognition of the value and the importance of our NATO alliance. Now, even in the most difficult times for our transatlantic community, and even when our system has been tried and tested, we, the United States and Europe, have come together and demonstrated our strength and our unity, just as we do today. As we stand in this decisive moment with all eyes on Ukraine. As we have said all along, there is a playbook of Russian aggression. And this playbook is too familiar to us all. Russia will plead ignorance and innocence. It will create false pretext for invasion, and it will amass troops and firepower in plain sight. We now receive reports of what appears to be provocations, and we see Russia spreading disinformation, lies, and propaganda. Nonetheless, in a deliberate and coordinated effort, we together are, one, exposing the truth, and two, speaking with a unified voice. As President Joe Biden has made clear, the United States, our NATO allies, and our partners have been and remain open to serious diplomacy. We have put concrete proposals on the table. We have encouraged and engaged Russia through NATO, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the United Nations, and bilateral dialogues. We have engaged in good faith. Russia continues to claim it is ready for talks, while at the same time, it narrows the avenues for diplomacy. Their actions simply do not match their words. And let me be clear, I can say with absolute certainty, if Russia further invades Ukraine, the United States, together with our allies and partners, will impose significant and unprecedented economic cost. We have worked intensively with many of you in this room to ensure we are prepared to move forward with consequences. We have prepared together economic measures that will be swift, severe, and united. We will impose far-reaching financial sanctions and export controls. We will target Russia's financial institutions and key industries. And we will target those who are complicit and those who aid and abet this unprovoked invasion. Make no mistake, the imposition of these sweeping and coordinated measures will inflict great damage on those who must be held accountable. And we will not stop with economic measures. We will further reinforce our NATO allies on the eastern flank. In fact, together, we have already taken steps to strengthen our deterrence and collective defense. We have deployed an additional 6,000 American service members to Romania, Poland, and Germany. We have put another 8,500 service members in the United States on a heightened sense of readiness. As President Biden has said, our forces will not be deployed to fight inside Ukraine, but they will defend every inch of NATO territory. Since Russia launched its proxy war against Ukraine nearly 8 years ago, the people of Ukraine have suffered immensely. Nearly 14,000 people killed, more than 1 million displaced, and nearly 3 million in need of aid. The United States has provided significant support to Ukraine, security assistance, humanitarian assistance, and economic assistance. And we will continue to support the people of Ukraine. I believe it is important for us, all of us, as leaders, to never forget the cost of this type of aggression on human lives and livelihoods. So, the United States, our allies, and our partners, together we have achieved remarkable unity. It is evident in our shared acknowledgement of the threats, our united response, and our determination to uphold international rules and norms. In the face of Russian aggression, I have been reassured and heartened by the widespread agreement across the transatlantic community that these rules and norms will be defended. And we should not lose sight of how rare it is in history to have a prolonged period of relative peace and stability. So let the past few months be a reminder to us all. Defending the rules and norms, upholding our principles, this is the vital work of each generation. In recent years, some have questioned whether the West is up to the task. Some have wondered whether this system can endure. Some have done so even on this very stage. Indeed, the theme of this conference 2 years ago questioned the staying power of the West, whether or not the transatlantic community was losing its cohesion, its influence, its appeal. So I will answer the skeptics and those seeking to test us. Today, the United States, our allies and our partners are closer together. Today, we are clear in our purpose. And today, we are even more confident in our vision. Our strength must not be underestimated, because after all, it lies in our unity. And as we have always shown, it takes a lot more strength to build something up than it takes to tear something down. Thank you all. Today.
All right, we'll leave it at that. You can go check out the Q&A with VP Kamala Harris and Wolfgang Ischke at the Munich Security Conference. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. All right. All right. Now, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, with this probably being her most important foreign diplomatic trip since taking office, showed quite a bit of grit on the world stage and a strength that up to this point seemed to be lacking from the Biden-Harris administration. Now, no matter what your opinion regarding the current United States executive branch, our existence as a world power, or better yet, a hegemonic power, appears to be faltering somewhat. Now, one could possibly say that it is our clandestine foreign services and the lack of skill or statecraft that have put us into this position. Or possibly, to put it frank, we as a union have given up our role as a faction for good by doing what we blame others currently for. All right. Now, has this diminished our role worldwide? That's a question that you have to ponder for yourself. All right. Now, Madam Vice President made mention of whether our system can endure. All right. Now, during the fall of 2021, China seemed to be mocking the current state of democracy that we cherish in our constitutional republic. All right. Now, on the screen, we have two documents. Let me pull those up. We want to have two documents. We're going to take a look at the first one. All right. The first one from the People's Republic of China was titled "The State of Democracy in America." All right. Now, the other was from the People's Republic, China State Council for Information Office, and it was titled "Democracy That Works." Democracy that works. These ideas globally seem to be spreading even amongst our allies. If you get a chance, take a look at these documents. Getting kind of long-winded, so we're not going to scroll through these things all that much. But when you get a chance, I want you to take a look at this section that says, in the China Democracy That Works, a new model of democracy, a new model of democracy. Actually, I'll go ahead and read that that section. All right, and then we'll move on and we'll get ready to get up out of here. All right. In promoting democracy, China has undergone a difficult process of selection, experimentation, practice, and development. China has created and developed whole process people's democracy in line with its national condition. This is a form of democracy with distinctive Chinese features, which at its time reflects humanity's universal desire for democracy. It has fueled the development of the country and driven the revitalization of the nation. It has contributed a new model to an international political spectrum. All right. Like I said before, These ideals globally seem to be spreading even amongst our allies. So if you get a chance, take a look at these documents. All right. Now, as we close, we've got to ask ourselves a few questions. All right. Is this the start of a new Cold War or the next World War? And has that buildup already begun? All right. Next question. Can the United States continue on the same path that it has no matter who occupies 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? All right. Next question. Will the current domestic political problems in the United States ultimately spill over into legislatures or foreign lands? All right. Now we'll end this today's episode. I'll put Saturn back on the screen. All right, let's refresh and see what new news popped up. All right. Then we'll end today's episode with another reading from Secretary Kissinger's book, Diplomacy. All right. Let's go ahead and get that out. Let's scroll this back up. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Secretary Kissinger goes on to say in his book, Diplomacy, in subsequent American usage, alliances in which America participated, such as NATO, were genuinely described as instruments of collective security. This is not, however, how the term was originally conceived, for in their essence, the concept of collective security and of alliances are diametrically opposed. Traditional alliances were directed against specific threats and defined precise obligations for specific groups of countries linked by shared national interests or mutual security concerns. Collective security defines no particular threat, guarantees no individual action, and discriminates against none. It is theoretically designed to resist any threat to the peace by whoever might pose it, and against whomever it may be directed. Alliances always presume a specific potential adversary. Collective security depends international law in the abstract, which it seeks to sustain in much the same way that a judicial system upholds a domestic criminal code. It no more assumes a particular culprit than does domestic law. In an alliance, the casus belli is an attack on the interest or the security of its members. The casus belli of collective security in the violation of the principle of peaceful settlement of disputes in which all peoples of the world are assumed to have common interests. Therefore, force has to be assembled on a case-by-case basis from a shifting group of nations with mutual interests in peacekeeping. The purpose of alliances is to produce an obligation more predictable and precise than analysis of national interests. Collective security works in the exact opposite way. It leaves the application of its principles to the interpretation of particular circumstances when they arrive, unintentionally putting large premium on the mood of the moment and hence on national self-will. All right. Now that brings today's episode to a close. Next week we'll take a look at the current operations, actions stemming from the Russia-Ukraine crisis for a bit, and then we're going to focus on how should we go about implementing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This has been Eric Brown of Saturn News with episode 2 of Saturn News Review. Today's date, February 24th, 2022.